Commissioner Fred Messerle's competence to serve as a commissioner was brought into question during the last BOC meeting after he made several errors that included preparing to vote on a resolution supporting House Bill 4019, the ONC Trust Conservation and Jobs Act, without knowing what was in the bill.
So, well, and I think we need to understand here that this resolution is in support of the ONC Trust. To my knowledge, the proposal for the Coos Bay Wagon Road lands is not a part of this legislation yet. It's not a part of.
Yeah,
It
yes,
is. It is in 4190.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we need to understand that the ONC Trust then, they're.
It isn't obvious on the video,
the
but there
trust
were
that they
audible
have-
gasps from around the
they're gonna
room as
create
people
between the
realized he
two
was set
trusts
to
and
vote
that
on a
is
matter
part of this
he
big
didn't
thing.
fully understand. Messerle also incorrectly claimed that a contingency fund for the solid waste department was a dedicated fund to be used for the eventual closure of the facility.
It exists. I think it's about 2.7 million right now, but my understanding is that that's a dedicated fund to closure, a dedicated closure fund, which,
That's false.
well,
I believe that that's not a requirement of DEP.
well, I don't know. My understanding is maybe we can clarify that, but I don't, that's what I've been told.
This false statement was even more surprising because Messerle has himself voted as a commissioner twice in favor of using money from that fund for repairs and the purchase of the metal shaker equipment at the Beaver Hill disposal site.
You know, another point to make here is that in this fiscal year, last year, the operation was about $82,000 underwater at the beginning of this fiscal year, last June 1. Our numbers to date on a cash operating basis have been averaging about $25,000 a month in that neighborhood. And this is all based on what's going through the books, the county books with Mary Barton, the monthly financials we get there, and they track with what Cheryl's seeing there too, on the ground out there. If we add in the closure payment and the loan repayment for the metal recycling, then that brings us up closer to $50,000 a month, and that's without anything for major repairs or depreciation. If we get into that range, that's, you know, kind of wherever you're going to go with those numbers, but you could probably add another, at least another $40,000 a month onto that. So we need to keep in mind as we look at this, we're kind of at a spot right now where we're kind of at we are at a decision point, and we've got to not only take the safety issues into effect, but we've also got to look at the economics of it. We cannot afford to burn that kind of cash flow, which is all exposure to the general fund. There's not necessarily a magic thing that you can't take it out of the closure fund either. So that's a consideration.
To address these vital
that
points, I've
we've
asked
gotta,
Randy Sanne to explain
take into
how the
account, too.
solid waste department budget actually works. So what do you have to say about all those numbers?
Well, I'll start with the 25,000 a month in revenue that Fred referred to, and that goes back to I had identified that even just prior to CAM beginning, those numbers have been dropping off for now well over half. But everything was turned over to Cam when he took over, because I had actually been in conversation with Andy, and he had informed me that Jackie Haggerty was interested and actively looking into it. It had to do with waste.
when you say looking into it, you're saying looking into enforcing the order and stipulation regarding the franchise agreement between less sanitation need waste connections and the county. Okay.
Thanks for not letting me run past that. Absolutely. The loss in revenue began and is really isolated to one, commercial haulers, verbalized decision and written decision, and even to stop bringing us the contractual amount of refuse they were supposed to bring us, and that is the exactly what this $25,000 a month shortfall revenue is about. I mean, they made the decision to not fully honor the contract based on the 2003 agreement that they signed with the then commissioners, and so that has resulted again in a drop off of revenue. But it was easily trackable, it was easily traceable, and it was something I believe should have been enforced from the very beginning. That facility began operating in 1980, and it began as an incinerator site that just had open stacks to the atmosphere. And in 1994, around that time frame, a new bill was passed, Title V, that required either those open air incineration facilities shut down, or that they had to be revamped in order to meet new environmental requirements. The citizens of Coos County at that time decided that they wanted to keep that incineration site open and active, and they passed a $7 million bond to upgrade the facility. For the next number of years, roughly 5 or 6 years, that facility operated well within it had a full cycle of repair and maintenance upkeep, but it never had a contingency / closure. It wasn't required by DEQ. DEQ's contract, which is available, and I can make it available, only required that was plan in place. And that fund has been building since then. It was roughly $2.7 million. It is no different than the contingency funds with any of the other departments in the county. Planning itself just recently transferred money from their contingency fund to purchase to make a purchase of some kind, and there was no loan involved with that. They simply used their contingency fund money because that's what it was there for. Ours is no different with regard to its availability, and then in the recent year or so, it's actually been accessed twice. Once for a metal shaker that's been out there and active since last spring, and once to advance the money for the repair of tube rupture that was caused by a company's by the introduction of the wrong chemical. We've accessed that monies twice, but in our case, we're being made access it as its loan, and in fact, it doesn't have to be.
Well,
what had in previous years been used as maintenance and as monies for maintenance and regular upkeep was then put into this fund, and the conscious decision was made to defer that maintenance. And now that act of deference is caught up, we're being essentially charged interest for using the money that was originally designed for that purpose. It was made on an annual basis, and it was $100,000 a year that was actually contributed from the county, and $90,000 a year that was contributed from our operation. So there was nearly $200,000 a year that was put into it. The county chose last year to stop their payment And obviously, if we are running in a deficit due to one of our haulers not bringing what they were actually obligated to bring, we have not been able to make our payment either. But that just further goes to my point that it's not a requirement as much as it is available there because of the decision to defer maintenance. Before we go any further, I want to make sure and clarify too that when the metal shaker was purchased, it was purchased on the acknowledgement that there was value in recyclable metals in the ash trench that was going to well and pay for the purchase of that metal shaker. So not only were we being charged interest to access funds that were supposed to be for the fund, but we were then purchasing something that was going to pay for itself and is paying for itself and can continue to pay for itself. So those seem to be funds that don't actually get put back into this equation. So we have losses and risks on monies coming in through the gate and not those going out. We also then have to include, as we operate, everything that we generate from now in the future. We have now the process. We now have the availability to process that metal before we actually even put it in. We're excavating stuff that's been buried for years, and now we also have the opportunity to extract that metal prior to it going in. So it's a value all the way around. In early spring, and all three voted to purchase it, and all three realized that it was value, and then, like I say, they chose to use these funds that Mr. Messerle says, to his understanding, aren't available to us. They've actually accessed them twice. Once again for the metal shaker, and the other for the repair of the ruptured tubing that was passed on to our insurance company, because the facility is insured for those kind of incidents. Those funds were actually accessed to purchase that metal shaking equipment.
Okay, $40,000 a month for repairs, and of all things, he mentioned depreciation, which I thought was kind of interesting. But you wanted to discuss that? Is that just picking a number out of a hat?
I think that's exactly what that is. I think he probably maybe he looks at the overall investment and from a private business standpoint breaks that down in whatever way he's chosen to just throw that as another opportunity to stress that it's that we're losing money in reality. We don't depreciate. We don't depreciate the equipment.
It just shows a lack of experience with government accounting.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way to much better put.
Okay, well, as a citizen, it's pretty astonishing to see how three individuals with little or no understanding of government budgets can disrupt a department with a long history of operating in the black in such a short period of time. One has to ask the question, have they done this to any other departments as well?